Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be tackling something pretty crucial to how India fights corruption,
Yeah,
and that's the Central Vigilance Commission,
the CVC.
or the CVC, as many people know it. So if you're a UPSC aspirant, this is definitely something you need to know.
Oh, absolutely.
But even if you're not, this stuff, this body, this organization,
Yeah.
really affects all our lives in ways we may not even realize.
Definitely we're talking about accountability, transparency,
Yeah,
making sure things are run fairly for everybody, making sure the resources are used where they're supposed to be.
exactly.
It's not just bureaucratic jargon. It's actually affecting people's lives every single day.
Right, and so we need to unpack this a bit.
Yeah.
So first of all, what is the CVC and where did it even come from?
Okay. So imagine it's the 1960s.
Okay.
India is grappling with corruption. So the Santhanam Committee is tasked with figuring out solutions.
Right.
Their big recommendation was a dedicated body to tackle corruption head on. And that is how the CVC was born in 1964.
Okay, so it's got a bit of history behind it,
A lot.
but it wasn't always this, like, powerhouse institution, was it?
Not quite.
I mean, did it start as something a little less official?
Yeah, initially it was set up through an executive resolution.
Oh, wow.
So not even a statutory body. It got that legal muscle and became the institution we know today in 2003.
Okay, so it kind of evolved over time and grew in influence and authority.
Exactly.
Were there any other kind of turning points in that evolution?
Absolutely. In 2004, the whistleblowers resolution was a game changer.
Right.
It basically made the CVC the central hub for anybody who wanted to report corruption. It gave potential whistleblowers a clear path to raise their concerns.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Huge.
So speaking of how this whole thing is structured, who are the people at the top making the decisions?
Right, so think of it as a team of expert watchdogs.
Okay.
You have the Central Vigilance Commissioner as the head honcho, and then up to 2 vigilance commissioners working alongside.
Okay, so it's a small but powerful group.
Yeah, very much so.
But how are they chosen for these roles? I mean, it can't just be a random appointment.
No, it's very deliberate. A high-level committee is involved. We're talking big names. The Prime Minister, the Union Home Minister, and the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha.
Right.
They recommend the candidates, and the president officially appoints them.
Okay, so there are a few layers of scrutiny involved there.
For sure.
Is there anything else that makes sure that the CVC isn't swayed by, political whims or anything like that? Just to maintain that independence?
Absolutely. So their term is fixed.
Okay.
It's 4 years or until they reach 65 years old, whichever comes first. And here's a crucial detail. After their term ends, they can't just hop into another government job.
Oh, okay.
So that helps prevent conflicts of interest and keeps things above board.
Right, so it's like building those safeguards into the system itself.
Exactly.
But let's flip the script for a second.
Okay.
What happens if someone in the CDC messes up, or worse, is corrupt themselves? How are they removed?
Well, there's a specific set of conditions for removal. Some are straightforward, others are a bit more nuanced.
Okay, like what?
So, for instance, being declared bankrupt or convicted of a crime
Makes sense.
involving moral turpitude would definitely get you the boot.
Okay, those seem pretty logical.
Yeah.
What are some of the less obvious ones?
Okay, so things get interesting with acquiring financial interests that could compromise their work.
Okay.
So essentially, you can't be engaging in shady business dealings while you're supposed to be the guardian of ethical conduct.
Yeah, right. That would completely undermine your credibility.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing the Supreme Court has a role in all of this, right? Especially with these serious accusations.
Absolutely. So in cases of proved misbehavior or incapacity, the president can't just remove a CVC member directly.
Right.
It goes straight to the Supreme Court for a thorough inquiry. Only if the Supreme Court gives the green light can the president then proceed with the removal.
Wow, okay, so there's a whole system of checks and balances here.
Yeah,
It's not easy to just toss someone out of the CVC.
definitely not.
So we've talked about who these people are, how they get appointed, how they are removed. But what about the internal structure of the CVC? What are the different parts that make this whole machine run?
Great question. So it's essentially divided into 3 key parts.
Okay.
The Secretariat, the Chief Technical Examiner's Wing, and the Commissioners for Departmental Inquiries. Think of them as specialized units, each contributing to the CVC's overall mission.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's break those down one by one.
Okay.
What does each of these wings actually do?
Right. So imagine the Secretariat as the engine room of the CVC.
Okay.
They handle the day-to-day administration. Ensuring smooth operations, they have a whole team of officers, from the secretary to supporting staff. keeping everything running smoothly.
Okay, so that's like the administrative backbones.
Yeah.
What about the chief technical examiner's wing? That sounds pretty specialized.
It is. They're like the engineering detectives of the CVC. Their main job is to audit major construction projects and investigate any complaints related to those projects, always with an eye for potential corruption. Think Sherlock Holmes with a hard hat sniffing out any whiff of wrongdoing in infrastructure.
I love that analogy. So they're the ones making sure that bridges aren't built with substandard materials.
Yes.
Or that contracts aren't awarded through bribery.
Exactly.
Now, what about the commissioners for departmental inquiries?
Okay, so those are the folks who conduct inquiries when a public servant is accused of wrongdoing. They're the investigators gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and basically building the case for disciplinary action if needed.
So they're kind of like internal judges deciding if there's enough evidence to warrant further action.
That's a good way to put it. They play a crucial role in ensuring that accusations are thoroughly investigated.
Yeah.
And that disciplinary action is taken when justified.
So we've got a good grasp on the structure now and the inner workings of the CVC. But let's talk about what they actually do. What are the main functions? The things that actually make a difference in fighting corruption.
Right. So you can think of it as a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
So first off, they have the power to investigate any corruption case referred to them by the central government.
Okay.
So they don't just sit around waiting for complaints to land on their desk. They can proactively dig into potential cases.
Oh, so they're not just reactive. They could be proactive as well.
Exactly.
That's good to know. And it's not just their own investigations, right? There's something about them overseeing the CBI as well.
Exactly. So they have this crucial oversight role when it comes to the CBI's investigations into specific corruption cases. So it's about making sure those investigations are thorough, impartial, and by the book.
So they're like the watchdog for the watchdog. The CBI already has a pretty serious reputation for handling high-profile corruption cases.
Yeah.
So having that extra layer of scrutiny from the CVC adds another level of accountability.
Precisely, and beyond investigations, they play a key role in advising the government on any matter related to vigilance and anti-corruption measures.
Okay.
So it's not just about catching the bad guys. It's about building a system that's more resilient to corruption in the first place.
Right. So they're not just enforcers. They're also strategists.
Yeah.
Helping to shape policy.
Exactly.
And create a more ethical environment for governance.
Yes. And there's even more to it.
Okay.
They also have a say in recommending the director of enforcement and play a role in appointing officers to the CBI.
Okay.
So their reach extends beyond their own investigations.
Wow. So they have influence over key personnel?
Yeah.
In other agencies as well.
Yeah.
So it's all starting to connect now. Okay, so we've talked a lot about what the CVC does, but who exactly falls under their watch?
Right.
Who are they authorized to investigate?
So think of it this way. Anyone in a position of power within the central government and its various agencies could potentially be under the CVC's scanner. So this includes all India's services officers, high-ranking officials in public sector banks and financial institutions, and the list goes on.
Okay, so it's not just about catching the small-time offenders. They have the authority to go after the big fish.
Exactly.
The individuals whose actions could have a significant impact.
Absolutely. That's why their jurisdiction is so wide-reaching. They have a say in how things are run across key sectors in India, from finance to infrastructure to administration.
It's really starting to become clear how much power and influence the CVC actually has.
It's a lot.
It is.
And to reinforce that independence, they even have the power to regulate their own procedures.
Oh.
They can call for information and reports from the government demanding transparency and accountability.
So they're not afraid to knock on doors and ask tough questions, even when it comes to other powerful entities within the government.
Not at all. And here's another crucial aspect. After they conclude an inquiry, they advise the government on what action to take.
Oh, wait.
And here's the kicker. The government is obligated to provide reasons in writing. If they disagree with the CVC's advice...
Okay, so they can't just ignore the CVC's recommendations without justifying their decision.
Right.
It sounds like the CDC has some real teeth.
Exactly. Now, remember how we discussed the CVC's role as the go-to place for whistleblowers?
Yes. The Whistleblower Act. I'm sure our UPSC aspirants are eager to hear more about this.
All right. Yeah.
It's such a crucial aspect of, governance and accountability.
Absolutely. So back in 2011, India finally enacted its own Whistleblower Protection Act. This was a monumental step towards encouraging individuals to come forward and report corruption without fearing for their careers or safety.
So before this act, people were essentially on their own if they wanted to expose wrongdoing.
Pretty much, yeah. They risk their jobs, their reputations, even their personal safety.
Wow.
The 2011 Act aimed to change that, creating a safer environment for whistleblowers to come forward.
Okay, so how does the CVC fit into this whole system?
They're designated as the authority to receive complaints under this act. So anyone who wants to blow the whistle on corruption can go directly to the CVC. They're the official point of contact for these disclosures.
That's a huge responsibility. It makes them a really central player in the fight against corruption.
Exactly. It's about encouraging people to speak up. Knowing that there's a dedicated mechanism in place to handle their complaints.
Right.
Of course, the Act also includes provisions to punish false complaints.
Okay.
It's about protecting genuine whistleblowers, not creating a system for settling scores or making baseless accusations.
Right. There have to be safeguards in place to prevent abuse of the system.
Absolutely. The Act emphasizes good faith. Anyone making a disclosure has to declare that they genuinely believe the information to be true.
So there's a built-in check to deter frivolous or malicious complaints.
Exactly. And it's also worth noting that the Act has limitations.
Okay.
It doesn't apply to matters of national security, for instance. There are certain areas where whistleblower protections don't extend.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There has to be a balance between transparency and protecting sensitive information that's vital to national security.
Right.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the CVC's origins, its structure, its functions, and even its role in protecting whistleblowers. But for someone who's not a UPSC aspirant, why should they care about the CVC?
Yeah.
How does this affect them in their everyday lives?
That's the key question, isn't it? It's easy to see the CVC as this distant entity, dealing with high-level corruption, but their work has a ripple effect on everyone.
Okay, give us some concrete examples. How does the CVC's fight against corruption translate into tangible benefits for ordinary citizens?
The thing about it this way, every rupee lost to corruption is a rupee that can't be used for essential services, like healthcare, education, or infrastructure. It's money that's being siphoned away from the public good.
So the CVC's efforts to ensure accountability and transparency in government ultimately contribute to a better quality of life for all Indians.
Exactly, by making sure resources are used efficiently and effectively. The CVC helps create a more equitable society, where everyone has a fair chance to thrive.
Right now, for our UPSC aspirants out there, this connection between the CVC's work and broader societal well-being is crucial to understand. It's not just about memorizing facts for the exam.
Right.
It's about grasping the real-world implications of this institution.
Absolutely. And for our non-UPSC listeners, remember, the CVC needs your participation to be truly effective. If you encounter corruption, don't stay silent. Use the mechanisms available to you, like the Whistleblower Act, to report it.
So knowledge is power. And in this case, it's the power to make a difference. The more we understand about the CVC and how it operates, the more empowered we are to hold our government accountable.
Well said. And remember, the CVC's website is a treasure trove of information, including annual reports detailing their activities and the challenges they face. It's a great resource for anyone who wants to delve deeper into their work.
Excellent point. I always encourage our listeners to go beyond what we cover here and explore these resources on their own. It's the best way to become informed and engaged citizens.
Absolutely. The fight against corruption is a continuous process, and it requires constant vigilance and participation from all of us.
And on that note, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
We've discussed the mechanisms designed to ensure the CVC's independence. But what are the real-world challenges in maintaining that independence in the face of political pressures? It's something to ponder as you continue your deep dive into the world of Indian governance.
That's a great question to wrap up with. It really gets to the heart of the complexities of governance and the constant push and pull between power and accountability. It's a topic worthy of further exploration.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Central Vigilance Commission. It's been a fascinating journey, and I hope you've gained valuable insights into this crucial institution. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. So we've had a really fascinating deep dive into the world of the CVC.
We have.
I think we both learned a lot, and hopefully our listeners have too.
I hope so.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else you think is particularly relevant for our UPSC aspirants? Or anyone else who really wants to understand the bigger picture?
It's interesting. We often talk about the CVC's role in fighting corruption.
Right.
But it's equally important to understand what that really means for good governance.
Okay, so you're saying it's not just about catching the corrupt officials, but about creating a system where corruption is less likely to happen in the first place.
Exactly. For UPSC aspirants, understanding the CVC isn't just about memorizing its structure and functions.
Right.
It's about grasping how it fits into the broader framework of checks and balances, how it contributes to a more transparent and accountable government.
So it's a piece of the puzzle, but a crucial one.
Absolutely.
It's about seeing the connections between different institutions and how they work together to achieve good governance.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of ethical governance comes in. It's not just about laws and regulations. It's about creating a culture of integrity, where doing the right thing is the norm, not the exception.
Right. So it's about going beyond the fear of punishment and fostering a genuine commitment to ethical conduct.
For sure.
So where does the CVC fit into all of this?
Well, the CVC plays a key role in promoting that ethical governance by holding individuals accountable for their actions. So when corrupt officials are investigated and punished, it sends a strong signal that unethical behavior will not be tolerated.
So it's about setting an example,
Yeah.
creating a deterrent effect.
Yeah.
But it's also about more than just punishment, right?
Yeah.
It's about promoting transparency
Absolutely.
and building trust in government institutions.
The CVC's emphasis on transparency through mechanisms like the Whistleblower Act and its own investigations helps shed light on corrupt practices. This, in turn, can lead to systemic changes that make it harder for corruption to flourish.
This is like shining a light on the dark corners, making it harder for wrongdoing to hide. And as citizens become more aware of these mechanisms, they become more empowered to participate in the fight against corruption.
Absolutely. That's why understanding the CVC's role is so important, not just for UPSC aspirants, but for all of us. It's about becoming informed citizens who can hold our leaders accountable and demand a government that truly serves the public good.
This has been a really insightful deep dive into the CVC. We've explored its origins, its structure, its functions, and its significance in promoting good governance in India.
Yeah.
But most importantly, we've highlighted how its work impacts all of us, whether we're aspiring bureaucrats or just everyday citizens.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you. I hope our listeners have gained a better understanding of this crucial institution and its role in building a better India.
And remember, if you're a UPSC aspirant, this deep dive is just the beginning of your journey into understanding the complexities of Indian governance. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to make a positive impact.
Well said, and for everyone else, remember that the fight against corruption is a shared responsibility. The CVC can't do it alone. It needs active participation from informed and engaged citizens like yourselves.
So on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. The CVC represents a beacon of hope in the fight against corruption. But its effectiveness ultimately depends on all of us. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep demanding a government that is transparent, accountable, and truly dedicated to serving the people. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.